Rosemary and Elizabeth were looking through the window of the dress shop. They were watching Clara put up a display of, I think it was a pantsuit. They started walking and talking, and Rosemary asked Elizabeth had she to Nathan since she told him she couldn't be with him, and she said no. Elizabeth says she knows she made the right choice not to be with Lucas, but she doesn't know if she has made the choice to be with Lucas. She hasn't seen or talked to Lucas since she told Nathan that she wasn't going to be with him. Elizabeth says she didn't want to really see Lucas until at least until after his mother told him that she and his father are separated. She began to tell Rosemary about Lucas always talked about how good of a marriage his parents had. Then Rosemary said, Lucas. And Elizabeth turned around and there was Lucas coming out of the saloon with a handful of books. After they spoke and talked about the books he had in his arm for the library, he mentioned that his mother said that Elizabeth and her were going to meet this morning. And Elizabeth said yes, and I should be going right now. And she left. Rosemary was still there and she asked him, how is your mother? He said, she's not quite herself. I'm thinking about calling my father and asking him to come down and visit. Rosemary said, that will be a surprise. Bill and Nathan ran across each other. Bill said that he's been working on Allie's adoption, but with the paperwork and stuff he needs, he's going to need a few more weeks before he can push it along. And Nathan said, whatever you need, Bill. And Bill said that someone else has been interested in that land that Nathan was looking at. And Nathan said that he was no longer interested. He changed his mind and he said, if you'll excuse me, I have to get along with my rounds. An old friend of Bill's rode up. He was a Mountie who got an upgrade. He's a superintendent now. He said that he had to talk with the constable about something. So Bill went on his way, and the superintendent told Nathan that they were opening up an investigation about the shooting that happened a year ago. And evidently Nathan's job is on the line because they think he may have had something to do with another Mountie getting killed. He rode away and Nathan looked after him like in shock. Lucas was in Fiona's chair. She was trying to talk him into shaving his beard off because she would be curious to see what it looks like under there. And Faith came in and she got into the conversation, and she also said it would be curious to see what's under there. And Fiona said, and you can always grow it back. And he said, I'll let me think about it. I'll see. And he got up and he walked out and gave her what looks like a big tip because her eyes were open wide when she looked at it. Lee had a chair delivered to him from what Jesse said was from across the world. Lee asked Jesse to take the chair to his house and take his motorcycle and take it to the lumber yard or something because he had been promising Rosemary he was going to move it or move it to the lumber yard. And so when Jesse got there and he took the cover off the lawnmower and he was like, whoa. And then he got on the motorcycle and he started riding it. Lucas was asking Lee when can he expect the lumber that he needed to work with. Lee told him that he could expect it by the end of the week. And as they were finished up talking, Michael came up and said the men needed to talk to Lucas. Said that they were talking about they need to drill down another 50 feet. And Michael agrees. At the dress shop, a lady was passing by the window and she was looking at the pantsuit and she was looking disapprovingly. She didn't like it. She frowned up, shook her head, and kept going. Clara was excited to see her stop and look, But when the lady kept going, she looked disappointed. Clara and Rosemary were looking at a new dress for the dress shop. I believe they're going to change that pantsuit out and put that dress in there. And uh, Jesse came by and he was riding the motorcycle and he was calling her name. And she went to the door with a shocked look on her face. What are you doing? And Rosemary, she was looking disapprovingly too, because I guess she knows that that's Lee's motorcycle that Jesse's on. Rosemary came walking out and she said, Jesse, get off that motorcycle right now. You have a wife to consider. That is exactly why I wanted Lee to sell that thing. Jesse said, is that why he's having me to drive this down to the mill? So he's dry snitching. I don't even know if you can consider that dry snitching. He's actually snitching on Lee about the motorcycle. Elizabeth and Helen were together, and Helen was talking about the manuscript, and Elizabeth was looking off into space somewhere, and Helen said, well, why don't I rewrite your manuscript while you relax? Elizabeth said, I'm not focused. I'm sorry. She went to open the window, and when she looked out, she saw Nathan down there with Bill. Helen walked behind her and saw what she was looking at Nathan, and she said, Lucas tells me that Constable Grant is a suitor. Elizabeth said, is that what Lucas tells you? Helen said, I asked and he confirmed. Elizabeth walked away from the window and said, he is not a suitor. Helen said, yet you clearly regard him with some sort of sentiment. From your writing and the short time I've known you, I can tell that you feel things deeply. You must have some idea for your affections for Constable Grant and my son. Elizabeth said, shall we get back to work? Henry came into the store to apologize to Ned and gave Florence some flowers. He was apologizing for getting upset in the last show because he thought Ned opened his mail. When Henry left out the store, Ned looked at Florence and said, I was the one he was accusatory to. And Florence said, but I was the one that defended you. Ned said, yes, you did. Jesse came back to the dress shop trying to talk Clara into buying the motorcycle. Clara shut that down quickly. Jesse don't look like he's taking no for an answer. He kind of did a smirk smile and rode off on the bike. Lucas was telling Michael if the oil doesn't come in soon, he's thinking about shutting the whole thing down. And right after he said that, it looked like the thing was shaking. Lucas turned around and said, is that normal? And Mike started running over there and he said, no. Michael started yelling, get out of there. Come on, get out of there. The oil started gushing up to the sky. Everybody was excited and yelling. Then all of a sudden there was a fire explosion. Everybody was in shock. The eyes were big. People in town saw the smoke going up into the air. Nathan started riding toward the smoke and Bill said, I'll meet you there. Henry came to the scene. He was driving and he saw the smoke and he stopped and then he kept going. But when he got there, Lucas said, Henry, what are we going to do? He said, we need dynamite, lots of it. They pushed the dynamite that they had gathered up into the well, and an even bigger explosion happened. And so I'm gathering this is a good thing because they all start cheering. Back in town, Lucas told Henry that he needed to talk to him. So they're going to meet up. I don't know where, but they said they were going to meet up. Lucas went into the diner where his mother was, and she told him, you're all I have left. And so, she was mad at him because he took that chance of putting himself in danger. Then he told her he's been trying to call his dad and he's not answering. And she said, well, let me try. And then he said, okay, and he walked out. Evidently, this is the next day, and Ned had some mail for Henry. Henry acted like he was happy to get that mail. On his way out, he saw Lucas, and Lucas said he would like him to. He may not be able to agree to all his demands, but he would like him to come back to work at the oil field. Henry said, "I'll think about it." Lucas said, "A few weeks ago, you were gung ho about coming back." Henry said, "Yeah, but I'll think about it." Then he burned rubber out of there. His back tires put put gravel on Lucas's shoes. Ned and Florence went to the doctor because Ned was limping around there. He think he stepped in a hole as they were at the oil thing. Faith diagnosed him, and Carson came into the room later, and he diagnosed him again and said that Faith would wrap his leg up. Carson walked out the room, and Faith was looking at him angrily. Florence and Ned was looking at Faith because they knew why she was angry. Rosemary is babysitting little Jack. He was getting ready to get into Lee's chair. Rosemary stopped him. She said, "We don't want to get the chair dirty." And then when little Jack ran off, she looked around and she sat in the chair. She know Lee bought the chair for himself, and he says it's bad luck if the person who bought the chair for doesn't sit in it first. It's bad luck. Yeah. And he didn't want to sit in the chair yet because he has that back brace on. He wanted to wait till he got the back brace off, and then he was going to sit in the chair. She said, "Well, that is comfortable." And then all of a sudden she started hearing creaking. And then the chair broke and she fell on the floor. Bill told Elizabeth about the investigation into Nathan shooting a year ago. And he said he was going to look into it. And as he walked away, Lucas came out the saloon and said, "Why didn't you tell me? You knew my father left my mother and you didn't tell me." She said, "Your mother confided in me. This is not my fault. I couldn't tell you." Lucas walked away. Clara went to Fiona's and to complain about Jesse not listening to her about buying the motorcycle. Faith went to Fiona to talk about Carson not listening to her about being a doctor. They both decided to go to the diner and get some cake. Fiona hadn't said a word, but when they left out, she said, "Save me some cake." Helen went to Elizabeth's house to apologize to her for putting her in the position of keeping her secret. Helen left town on the last stage. Lucas saw her off. As the stage was leaving, Elizabeth came walking up. Lucas told her it's not only that she didn't tell him about his parents not being together, but the fact that they don't love each other anymore. Elizabeth said, "Maybe they do still love each other. Like I told your mother, she might need to be the one to reach out." Lucas said, "What would you know about it?" She said, "That was cruel." And Lucas walked away. As Lucas was walking away, Nathan was walking on the others coming from the other side of the street, he and his horse. Lucas went to the right, Nathan was coming to the left, and Elizabeth turned and went down the center. And this is the end of this episode, Season 8, Episode 3, When Calls the Heart.